All right, Jacob, the floor is over to you.
One second, I'm just, my headphones are not connecting. One second.
Okay, so to everyone joining, some of you might be familiar with Jacob's company, Real Marketing Co. For those of you who are not, you will learn about it today. I had the pleasure to see Jacob do this presentation on branding for a client of mine separately, and I thought it was fantastically done and very relevant for anyone that is starting a brand, right? We talk about branding a lot, or brand. But what does that mean to actually have branding, right? What does it mean to be a brand? How do you build that out, right? It doesn't mean just like a name and a logo, right? There's a lot more to it. So when I saw this presentation, I thought it would be a great idea to have him do the same for you, all of you in class. And then, yeah, we'll have Jacob's presentation. I'm guessing he's going to take questions and all those sorts of good stuff as well. So whenever you're ready, Jacob, just let me know.
Yes, I'm ready.
Okay, all right.
Can you hear me? All good?
All good on my side.
Okay. Okay, presentation visible? Hello?
Yes.
You can see now? Okay.
Yeah.
Full screen? All good?
Full screen, all good.
Okay. So, yes, so good evening, everyone. So today I will be talking about branding and brand identity, essentially in a sort of workshop format. I promise to not make this session too long. I'll try to keep it short and sweet. And please feel free to interrupt me if if you happen to have any doubts regarding anything in between. And I know this is a weekend. Everybody is waiting to get into the weekends. So promise I'll keep it short. So essentially, what we'll be talking about today is branding. So we'll go through some important things to know when we're trying to develop a brand or rebrand an existing one. So this presentation is not exactly about how to develop a brand or brand identity, but it's about what all you should be thinking about when you're working on your brand, or what are the kind of questions you should be asking yourself, or what are some important things to consider when you're putting in the effort and time to develop your brand identity. And since all of us here right now we're already entrepreneurs or are sure that we're going into the business field, so I don't think anybody needs to be convinced what is the, or nobody needs to understand, or as in nobody needs to be convinced what is the importance of how having a good brand guide. So I think everybody knows how important that is. So again, once again, repeating, the objective of this presentation is to understand what are the things you should be thinking about when working on your brand and developing it. And as for today's agenda, we are going to be covering 6 broad areas. We talk about understanding certain things about your target audience that should be considered while you're developing a brand. Then the same thing with your core values. And then we'll look at how to understand your brand personality and brand voice. And finally, we'll work on developing an elevator pitch and a tagline for your brand, or rather, how we do it. So, starting with the target audience, this is probably the most important section today. And as entrepreneurs, we need to very clearly understand who our audience is, right? We've been that since first year BBA. So who is your potential customer, and who is going to see the messages that you're going to develop? And basically, who are you trying to communicate with? Because a part of what we do as entrepreneurs is to make sure that we address other people's problems and their needs with relevant solutions, right? We are essentially problem solvers. So for that, you need to understand the details about your customers, their lives. We have to explore the personal side of their lives. And essentially, we need to find out what makes them tick. And why do we do that? The reason we do this is to basically uncover the emotions they go through, so that when we connect with them, we are able to connect with them on a human level. And why do we try and do that? Why are we trying to connect with them on a human level or an emotional level? Because that is the only way where we can get our message through to them in the most effective way possible, or that is the most effective way to get our message through to them. So I hope that's clear as into why we need to identify your target audience. The next step is obviously reaching your target audience. And once you reach them, you have to know what is the best way to communicate with them. And reaching them is more of a marketing issue. We're probably not going to touch upon that. But after you reach them, how do you communicate with them? That falls under the purview of branding. So how do we do all this? Let's find out. So the first step as to understanding your audience is that you will need to divide their characteristics into two. So that is demographics and psychographics. Okay? So we know what demographics are. That is sex, income, age, location, etc. All of the facts, all of the hardcore facts that you can think of. But then the psychographics, these are totally different from your demographics. This is what most designers or brand strategists look for actually. This is what's actually valuable to them when they're putting together a brand strategy. Because this includes what you think are your target audience opinions, beliefs, values, etc. So there is a fairly simple and straightforward exercise that we can do to define them. And I have two examples in the next slide so you can get an idea of what it looks like. So example one is of a security service. So these people, this is an example of an audience defined by a security service company. So if you check the demographics part, it's just facts. Basically talks about who you're dealing with, what do they do, how we categorize them, etc. We all know what demographics mean. Now let's see the psychographics part. So number one is written, does not like drawn out negotiations. So that means that customers generally don't like to negotiate. I mean, that makes sense, right? You wouldn't want to bargain much. If you're approaching a security service, you're probably not much of a bargainer or negotiator. And then we see that they are risk averse people. They like to be prepared and they get nervous when things are uncertain. And that also makes sense because these are people who want to feel secure, and that's why they're coming to security service company. And finally, they do not always go for the first option. They like to study other companies and get other pitches. So that just proves that these people like doing their research and they like being thorough, especially when it comes to security, right? So does that make sense? So I hope you get an idea of what these psychographic characteristics are, and they basically can be they can be personalities, lifestyles, interests, opinions, etc. So I have one more example to solidify the concept. So this is an example from an athletic shoe company. So here, their customers, if you look at the psychographic section again, customers, they want to finish, but they don't want to seem like their followers or they blindly follow trends. They like having their own, tend to look up to famous sports figures, and they strongly value friendships and communities. A quick example that I can think of is Nike, the Nike running club, for example. And finally, they also see people who would be loyal to one or two athletic brands, and that's it. So this also essentially shows how having a relatable branding can help with customer retentions too. Cool. I hope this part is okay. So this is just one method of defining your. So what we're trying to do here essentially is we're trying to find out what are the kind of people that I will be trying to sell my stuff to. Okay. So another thing that when we develop a brand, even though we have identified a target audience, we need a little bit more details regarding our target audience. That is, we need to be able to identify their profile. That is an integral part of developing a brand strategy. And these are some questions that you can ask yourself for that. So before we start with the questions, I know some of us here, that we are operating or we're planning to operate in the B2B segment, and some of us will be operating in the B2C segment. So if you fall into the B2C category, this is pretty straightforward. But if you're in the B2B category, you can answer these questions by considering your customers as the decision maker in the team that you're dealing with, or you can try a team and then answer it. Either of these approaches will work perfectly. So number one, first we need to know what objectives and goals they have as it relates to your offering. So that basically means what kind of strategic aspirations or hopes they might have. We're trying to figure that out. And secondly, what are the problems your customers face before they can get what they want? So here we're looking for their pain points and core challenges. And thirdly, we talk about how these problems impact your customers emotionally. And finally, we talk about their desires. That is, what is the desirable experience that they want? You just have to imagine what would be the best case scenario that you can offer a customer. What is the customer's utopian image of your company or the service they're going to get? And so these are basically a few questions that you can answer to understand your target audience's profile. But I know this sounds like a lot, but the thing here is this section, when we try and do this, speed is much more important than accuracy. I know I mentioned this is the most important part of the presentation in the beginning, but essentially what you should be doing is you should not be taking more than 5 to 7 minutes to answer these questions. We just want a brain dump essentially, and because you are the ones who you're entrepreneurs who are directly dealing with your customers, so obviously you will know your customers the best. So I'm sure whatever that comes out on the top of your head will be more than enough for your section. Cool. So that is section number 1. That is target audience. Are there any questions or anything? I know I was very comprehensive for this section because this is the most important one. But if there are any questions, this is the right time, or we will move on to the core values. Anything? I can't see the screen, so.
Yeah. Any questions, anybody?
Good.
Okay, I think we're good to go ahead.
All right. Great. So the next section, which is core values. So what are core values? They are basically the fundamental driving force of what you and your employees stand for in the world. So what we're looking for here is essentially to find out your brand's highest priorities, which will help in refining the image of your brand. So an already existing image, you want to be refining that. Let's take a look at some famous examples here again. So number 1, we have Microsoft. So Microsoft's core values, they include innovation, diversity, social and trustworthy computing. So just go through the descriptions here, and you can see that these are essentially principles which basically even draws the customer towards away from them, right? So these are underlying principles which attract or move a customer towards away from you. And I have one more example here, which is Coke. So these are Coke's core values, CocaCola. So leadership, collaboration, accountability, passion, and diversity. So something interesting here that if you guys noticed is that generally as customers of Coke or Coca-Cola, we don't think about Coke being a leader or Coke being passionate when we're trying to buy a bottle of Coke, but it's there in our subconscious. And this is actually what matters when it comes to business or purchasing behavior, because if you can reserve, if you as a brand can reserve yourself some positive space in your customer subconscious, it greatly skews their purchasing behavior in your favor. So they're more likely to buy your stuff. And now that we understand what core values are, how do you define your core values? So this is a pretty easy process. So you just have to pick a few values and describe them in your own way, depending on how they represent your company. And the final core values can be extracted or derived from whatever you pick in the first few exercises. So here I have given a few examples. So for example, we can choose 3 to 5 top core values that you feel best represent your business. So here, maybe we can pick some values from any of the sections here. That it can be growth, risk taking, for example, listening, transparent, sustainable, etc. So a fun way to actually go about doing this exercise, another fun way, is to do something called the mass group exercise. This is actually something developed by Jim Collins. So what you do here is basically imagine that you have been asked to recreate the best attributes of your organization on another planet, but you imagine that you have limited number of seats to reach that planet, that is seats on a rocket ship. So you have to figure out the people that you're going to select from your organization to send all the way to Mars, and list out all the attributes about each person that made you select them. So these people are people who are likely to be exemplars of the organization. Obviously, they follow the organization's core value and purpose. They probably have the highest level of credibility with their peers. And of course, they probably have the highest level of competence too, if you're selecting them. So what you can do is just list down the attributes about each person that made your team nominate them. So that is the end of the second section, which is core values. Now we move on to brand personality. So if anybody has any doubts with core values, I hope that's a pretty simple section. So I get if that's okay. So in terms of brand personality, we try and understand how we can figure out your brand's personality. So before that, what is brand personality? So this is basically a set of human characteristics attributed to a brand. So we're trying to figure out what your brand or your company will sound like as they will. So brand personality refers to a personification of the brand. And why do we do this? It's basically because brands tend to stand out not only by how they position themselves in the marketplace, but also by how well they connect with the customers. So as I mentioned at the beginning, if you're going to connect with them on an emotional level, that is probably the most efficient way to do that, to connect. And here are a few examples for personalities also. These are some brands, big brands that are great. So for instance, if we take Apple here, their personality is sophistication. Apple has a sort of non-corporate, artistic, sophisticated, and creative personality, right? But at the same time, they're very famous for their simplicity. And this makes sense because Steve Jobs used to say simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. And we have another example, which is of Amazon. So Amazon is an extremely trusted brand. They are reliable and competent. We just know it. But at the same time, they appear very, very sincere because Jeff Bezos, he keeps talking about how, if you watch any of his interviews, he keeps talking about how customers are the king or how customers are the most important factor for Amazon. He keeps quoting customers above everything. And so we automatically trust them that we know we're going to get a refund if something is damaged, or we know we can return something if something's not right. And so how do you develop something like this for your organization, right? So there's a way to do that. And we can use a brand personality framework. So this framework essentially contains 15 traits organized into 5 core dimensions. We saw these dimensions and their examples in the previous slide. That is this one, sincerity, excitement, competence, etc. So what you need to do here to identify your personality is to apply these to your brand by ranking these traits on a scale of 1 to 5, where 1 is obviously the least representative and 5 is the most representative of these traits. So if you ever get to doing this exercise one day, do try to keep in mind that the brand personality should have a role in advancing the business strategy and the brand itself too. The point I'm trying to make here is we do not want to have a brand personality because everybody has one or just because it's cool. It should actually contribute towards your business or towards developing your brand. Cool. Okay, so that is on brand personality. So any questions? I hope no questions. Yeah.
Hey,
If
Jacob,
not, we
I'm just going
can.
to ask you something
Yes.
a little challenging, but I'd love to get your take on this. So who or what drives the brand personality even to begin with? Is it the founder? How much does the founder's own personality play into it? Or do you do it just by, well, do you look at the customers and then how the customers behave? I mean, where does the first seed come from?
So I think it's not going to be the same for everybody. So one is definitely the founder. So a good example for that would be Apple while Steve Jobs was there. I mean, a lot of people admired Apple just because of Steve Jobs. And a lot of people, and I think Apple genuinely lost a lot of fans after Steve Jobs died. Even though I personally think that products got better, people were just not happy with it because Tim Cook was in front and not Steve Jobs. So that can be one aspect, one set of people. Another one is it can also depend on what they stand for, their policies, etc. So if you're a brand which is who concentrates a lot on sustainability or a way accessibility to uh, disengage people, that can also count. So it's essentially a mix of things, I think. I'm not sure if I'm right, but like you said, it can also be the CEO or the leading person in front, or it can also be what they stand for as a company.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Yeah. Right. Okay. So the next one we're doing here is, yes. So this is a relatively fun exercise to do. I mean, that is identifying the brand voice. The exercise that we can do for this is a fun one. So before that, what is the brand voice? So brand voice is basically how you want to sound to others. And the brand's voice is essentially an extension of your brand's personality, which we discussed earlier. So we'll look at an example here. So again, we'll take Coke. So Coca-Cola, their voice is friendly and positive. I mean, we always see people dancing and smiling in their ads, and it's always a super positive vibe, right? That's just their style of communication, and hence that is their voice. And they stick to using this voice when they're communicating with us. As I mentioned in their ads, if you see the ads, it's a very funny, happy life vibe to it, right? And all of their ads, all of their posters, everything tends to skew towards that. So that was an example. Now let's see how we can develop something like that for our brands. So this is the exercise I was talking about. This is essentially a scale that we can use to find where our brand lies, or where you want your brand to be. So here, if we take the first parameter, that is humor, we have Geico on one end and CNN on the other end. I don't know how many of you have seen one of those Geico ads. They're really funny. A lot of them are on YouTube, very viral ads. They're into insurance, I think, and it's in the United States. So it's funny how an insurance company is successful after being so humorous. But that is one end of the spectrum. And then we have CNN, which is an extremely serious brand. Obviously, we know that. And all the messages they send out, all the communications they have, they're very stiff and to the point. And same case if we take Respect here, the third one, Wendy's, we know, very sassy, very casual brand, but at the same time, Rolex is probably one of the most respected brands out there. So here, what we are looking to find out a tone for your company, and this tone or this tone of voice ideally should be used consistently across all your communication channels. So whatever message you're putting out to the world, it should probably match this tone. So why are we trying to do this? It is so that your audience, so when you're a big brand and you're interacting with your audience regularly, you would like if your audience can familiarize themselves with your brand as if they're talking to a human being. So essentially, the ultimate goal of this exercise is to make that happen. All right. So that is all about the brand voice. And now we move on to the elevator pitch. So, what is an elevator pitch? This is basically how we can represent or present an overview of a business by the time it takes to complete an elevator ride. So, ideally 60 seconds, 70 seconds or less. So, let's see a very, very famous example here. It's an example of Airbnb. So I'll just read it out. Most tourists booking online care about price, and hotels are one of the highest costs for when traveling. On the other hand, platforms like Couchsurfing have proven that over 500,000 people are willing to lend their couches or spare bedrooms. We have created a platform that connects travelers with locals, letting them rent our rooms or even entire places. Travelers save money, locals can monetize their empty rooms, and we just take a 10% commission. Now, this is a very iconic elevator pitch. It's pretty famous. I know some of you who were in the entrepreneurship and opportunity class last semester probably remember this. I think we discussed this briefly. So now let's see how we can make one like this for us, yeah, for our brand or company. So to do this, again, we need to answer a few questions. Number one being, what is the problem that you're trying to solve? What is your solution? What or who are you and why are you the one to solve this problem? What is your value proposition? What do your clients get from working with you? What do your partners get from working with you? And finally, what should would be the first thing a prospective client or partner do to work with you? Right. So I know these are just questions. I'll show you some examples also of these questions answered. So this is an example of Palm Pilot. It was a handheld digital assistant device before smartphones. Is anybody aware of the Palm Pilot? Has anybody seen Palm Pilots? Anything? Anybody owned one?
I remember really wanting one when it came out.
Oh,
I
yeah, they
thought,
were really cool. Yeah. I remember my dad had one, and you could play games on it with a stylus. Really, there was no color, very pixelated, really
yeah,
bad, but probably the coolest thing out there at that point.
right.
So so, yes, so here, if we look at the example, this example has all the questions that we just saw before. That are these questions. So they clearly talk about the problem here, the solution, why they're solving it, and everything else. So the problem here is that the customer is dissatisfied with the current planners available at the market. I don't At that point, I don't think there was a proper digital planner. The solution is the Palm Pilot, of course, the Palm Pilot digital assistant. That is their product. And who are they and why are they trying to solve this specific problem? Because they have relevant expertise and experience in the industry. And what is their value proposition? I think initially Palm Pilot was targeting pharmaceutical sales representatives who really needed a digital assistant to not miss out on their appointments. Because I think at that point, there's some story about how if you're a sales representative and if you miss out on an appointment, they did some calculations and they equated up to $2,000 per missed appointment. So that's a lot of money. So what value does the Palm Pilot offer? It's essentially offering to help you avoid that is missing your appointment. So this is how you can basically develop your own sales pitch, and hope that part is clear, and we can move on to the next. Anybody has any doubts? I hope that is okay. That was on elevator pitches. I know we've heard a lot about elevator pitches, but we rarely see how we can properly develop one. So this is just one method of, obviously there are a lot of methods doing whatever we can do, but this is one method. So I hope that part is clear. Yeah, we can move on to tagline.
Any questions, anybody? Yeah, I think we're good. Hey, Jacob, you can also make this presentation available, right, after you're done?
Definitely. Yeah.
Thanks.
All right. So this is the beginning of the end. We're close to the end. So tagline. So here we're in a tagline. What we're looking for is essentially a mantra that creates interest in your brand. So we're trying to define what we want our audience to remember us for. So unlike some of the other exercises we did, the tagline is purely for an external purpose. I mean, most of the people who are inside your company or you're associated with probably wouldn't want to deal much with the tagline, probably won't make sense to them also. So it's essentially a customer facing item. It's purely customer facing, something that is directly up in front of the customers. And we have some examples here. So number one is Nike, just do it. Think different by Apple. Open happiness, CocaCola. Expect more, pay less. That is Target. So in essence, it should be short, sweet, and interesting. So how do we create a tagline? Let's learn how we do that. So there's this very simple worksheet that we can use to do this. This is the worksheet here. There's not much of an explanation for this. It's mostly intuitive, but again, and it's just your ideas that take importance here. So this is basically what you feel can truly represent your brand in the outside world in the most concise way possible. Also, a tagline is definitely one of the most important elements of your brand and your brand communication if you're going outside and communicating actively with other people, especially in a B2C situation, because you would want your audience to get an idea about the message that you are delivering using a very few memorable selection or sequence of words. Right. So in this worksheet, there are a few categories. I'll just go through them. The first one is imperative, which basically is something that starts with a verb and commands an action. So a good example here would be just do it. That's by Nike. Think different by Apple. or Open Happiness by CocaCola. The second category is descriptive, which basically describes your service, product, or a promise that you're giving, a brand promise. A good example here is expect more, pay less from Target, or imagination at work. Let me ask you guys. Do you guys know whose tagline is that? Imagination at work. Any idea? Pretty sure you can Google it fast enough if you're fast in this.
Imagination at
It's
work.
General Electric at GE.
Oh.
So yes, right. It's a very famous one, but you never get to. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but yeah.
Never associated with GE, but yeah, that's good.
Sorry, what?
Yeah, it's for, I don't know, even my perception of GE is not so much imagination, but it's a good.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, and they recently had a rebranding also, I think. Yeah, but anyway, yeah. So yes, and then there's ideas worth spreading, that is TED Talks. So the next one is superlative, which is essentially what you do here is you try and position your company as the best in its class. So whatever you're doing, imagine that you're the best at it, and then try to figure out a tagline out of that. So good example here is a diamond is forever. It's very famous, De Beers, or King of Beers, Budweiser, and the ultimate driving machine is BMW. And then we have provocative, and these taglines are thought-provoking taglines, and they're usually questions. The most famous one is "Where's the beef?" That is Wendy's. And finally, we have specific. That is specific. What specific tries to do it is that it reveals the business category that you're in. For example, Happy Hunting by eBay, or Love the Skin You're In, that is Olay, or Drivers Wanted is Volkswagen. So this is essentially what it is. This is a tagline worksheet. You fill it out, and it will essentially help you refine what your tagline or final tagline should be. So yeah, that is one method to tagline, formulate your tagline. And okay, that is the end. We have covered all 5 sections. So yes, that is my presentation.
Okay, fantastic job. Claps all around. Well done. Anyone have any questions? Maybe Jacob, you can also talk a little bit about your entrepreneurial journey. I know you've been you've been on the JGU social media quite a bit lately, but maybe you can tell everyone how you got started, and then where you are now.
Right. So uh, yeah, so starting, I think I started this up. I think the real starting was when I was in 10th grade, I would say 10th grade holidays. So essentially at that point, after my exams, I had, I think, 1 to 2 months of a break, and I didn't have much to do. And I am a big foodie, so I love eating stuff. So at that point, we had a family friend who owned a restaurant here. It was a restaurant chain, pure veg South Indian restaurant chain. So my dad thought it was a funny idea to put me in the restaurant as a waiter, as a sales representative. So I think that is when my whole journey of entrepreneurship started. Because if you talk to any good entrepreneur or the big entrepreneurs, what they always say is sales is probably, yeah, good job, yeah. Sales is probably the most important part of being an entrepreneur, and it is also the hardest part. Because if you take marketing, operations, or any other segment of entrepreneurship or business, you can learn that or you can do that. But you can only do that, or there's no point in refining that or improving on that if you don't have sales. So essentially, if you're a company or if you're running a business, if you don't have sales, no matter how good all the other segments are, there's no point in running that business, right? Sales equals revenue equals profit. So I figured at that point that sales is the most important thing. And turns out I started out, and in the beginning, the manager wouldn't let me really do anything. He just asked me to sit there because he was worried, I would mess it up or whatever. And but I was a little intrusive. I decided to take some orders while he was not looking. And most of the waiters over there, I think there were 3 or 4 other waiters at that point with me, and one guy for the in the counter taking the bill. So all the waiters over there, they were not Malayalis, or they didn't know the native language, that is Malayalam. Obviously, I was in Kerala, so they didn't know the native language. So most of them were North Indians. So when they were taking the order, the customer is communicating in Malayalam, and they wouldn't really be able to communicate back. So the order taking was a very straightforward process. There was not much communication involved in that. It was the customer saying what they want. They might show the menu. That's it. They take the order. They go away. And the biggest drawback here was that that restaurant was not doing very well at that point. So half the items in the menu was not available. So the waiters, they couldn't show the menu, even though the menu was there. They couldn't show it because if the customer orders something which is not available, which is essentially 50% of the menu, you know what happens later. So so I realized the problem that was not a problem, but the communication was a big gap over there. So I noticed this early on. So I went on to the customers and I tried to upsell basically. So essentially at that point, one masala dosha was around my one ghee roast was 30 rupees,
Okay.
one masala dosha was 40 rupees, and one special Chennai ghee roast masala dosha was 90 rupees. So essentially, the only difference between a masala dosha and a Chennai special masala dosha was just marginally bigger. I would say 25 to 30% bigger, and but the difference in price was more than double. The bigger dosha was 90 rupees. So if you had just managed to convince the customer, it's essentially selling one dosha would be equal to selling 2 doshas if it's a bigger one. So yeah, that's how. So I managed to do that very effectively, and I managed to break all the records for that month. I was the waiter who sold the most amount of doshas. I had the biggest average bill sizes. So for a family, usually since it was a very cheap restaurant, the average would come to 300 to 400. Mine was way bigger than that. I would sell around 600 to 700 rupees per family. So that's when I realized I was actually good at sales. I could sell stuff. And then, yeah, I think everybody is more or less familiar with what happened later on. The company started digital marketing. I don't think anybody wants to hear more of what happened. But yeah.
No, I think it's great. Anyone have any questions, thoughts for Jacob? I mean, I guess my question for you is like, where do you take it now, right? So how are you looking to grow?
Yeah.
What are you looking to do next? I think that's on everyone's thoughts for their own businesses, right?
Yeah, yes. So that is a big problem. So after BBA, so I know digital marketing right now is going well, but I know it's not a sustainable thing, or I'm pretty sure I won't be able to generate the revenues I'm generating right now after 2 or 3 years down the line. So that is one problem. So diversification, I mean, even if I do, there is a limit to that. So what I'm thinking is to just run it as long as it runs and essentially go into consulting. So even right now, even though I'm doing purely digital marketing, most of the clients that we talk to, we give them a lot of advice too, a lot of strategy too, but restricted to marketing. But we are starting to do that, and especially with startups, we do a lot of startup consultancy. Because if we're operating in restaurant industry and we are operating with a big restaurant, we know what all marketing things to do. We know a little bit of operations and supply chain. We know little details about everything, starting from their billing software onwards, because essentially we
Right.
need to work with those things also. So when a small guy comes, we already know 50% of what they need to be knowing. So I realized so consulting is a good thing to get into. Plus, obviously, my dad, he's also into consulting. We have a consulting firm. So thinking of slowly shifting to consulting and taking the marketing thing along on the side.
Okay,
That
where do
is
you think digital marketing is going itself? If we look at the sector in general, because I feel like there's still a lot of people that are looking to get into digital marketing. But what does that
definitely, yes.
think that is defined as, and where do you think it's going?
So yeah, so the fact that you said a lot of people are trying to get into digital marketing, that is a good thing and a bad thing at the same time, because at the same time, when a lot of people are getting into it, a lot of people are also trying to do it themselves, right? So digital marketing, I think it's definitely going up a hill. It's definitely going in a positive direction. But for people like us, being agencies or the middlemen between Facebook and its final customers, in India, as of now, I think it is okay. Facebook still promotes agencies. I mean, there are courses for agencies. You can talk to Facebook representatives, ask them doubts and stuff. But abroad, I think they're not the middlemen, because agencies, if you look at here, it's of Kerala, I know a few agencies. So if you maybe 100 rupees on a digital marketing campaign, the agencies take 60 rupees and Facebook only gets 40. So, I mean, it's not a big deal for Facebook per se, but for the customer, it is a big deal because more than 60% of what he's intending to spend is going directly to the overheads to cover the agency. So I think abroad, Facebook is trying to sort of, Facebook and all the digital marketing area giants are trying to cut off the middlemen. Even Google, they announced a new digital marketing workshop. I mean, free workshop. Anybody can do it, and they explain everything beautifully. The course. So it's a long shot, but I think slowly people are going to start doing it themselves. There'll obviously be a need for experts who have expertise in all the industries or areas, but I think it's going to slowly go down. I think recently somebody from Facebook called me. I enrolled in a program it was a program for advice on how to manage your page and how to build your marketing strategies. And the moment so they can see your account. So they looked at my account and they saw 10 to 15 ads running, and they were like, "Are you an agency?" So this is all different companies, and I was like, "Yeah." And they're like, "Oh, sorry, we can't enroll you in this program." It's like, "Oh, okay, fine." So yeah, I think they're
Oh, really?
starting to discriminate. Yeah, that
Oh,
is one thing.
you wanted to target individuals.
Yes. So I think they're slowly starting. I was really surprised too, because before I was also talking to someone on Facebook over in Texas, and she actually invited me to be part of a beta study program regarding lead generation. So they actually paid us to do it. I think they paid around 2 lakhs. They promised around 2 lakhs. We haven't got to it, to just try out lead generation in our own ways and then just give them the result back. So they wanted to improve the things in India. So yeah, but in that terms they approach us, but in terms of the future, I'm a little skeptical about it. I think they're slowly trying to kick us out in one way or another. Yeah.
Yeah, that could be an interesting also avenue where okay, maybe you could also, as an individual, kind of be working for the platforms. I think with the expertise that you've now gained, right, and the knowledge that you have.
Right.
I'm not sure if you want to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm open to that. I mean, they learn new stuff. Essentially, I'm the one who's gaining from it, so why not?
Right.
So yes, that is one thing. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yep.
All right. Anyone have any questions, thoughts for Jacob? We've had a quiet class today.
Yep.
Yeah, I think we're okay.
All good.
Very good. Thank you so much. You did a good job.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Everybody. Thank you.
Great.
All right.
Is there anything anyone wants to chat about? This was the branding class. Are we all good? Is anyone still even here? Okay, guys, I think this is all I want to talk about today. I see that we are a little bit quiet, so if there isn't anything else, any questions for Jacob, any questions for how to even brand yourself or your venture, I think we can wrap up then. I would like to just offer Jacob's advice, expertise. Check out Real Marketing Co. if you are interested for your own venture or someone you know. I'm sure for at least right now, they would be happy to chat and take on some more customers. Right, Jacob?
100%, yes.
All right, everyone.
I had a question.
Please.
The PSG case study, is it due tonight? 12?
Yes. Have you read it?
I'm halfway through it.
Okay. You know what I'll do? I gave someone an extension, and I'll give that to all of you. Let's say by the weekend. I won't close the sheet. So have it done by the weekend. It's not fair just to give one extension.
That would be great, Professor. That would be great.
Hi, Vibe Up. Someone is alive out there. Okay, so let me know what you think of the case study. I thought it was interesting. There's a lot of other boring ones out there. I thought this might be interesting, but let me know. And yeah, so let's have it till the end of the weekend, right? All right, class. I will see you next week.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, I'll continue to put additional articles on the dashboard. If there is anything else that you do want to learn about, of course, feel free to always email me, and I'll try to kind of put additional resources on there. Okay, I did also want to let you know that we are going to be having Katrina come back and do a workshop on March 19th, so almost exactly 4 weeks from now, on storytelling. Okay. Cool. Oh wait, yeah. So sorry. So we're gonna have Anahad Kaur come in and do a specialized talk on Instagram and building a brand on Instagram on March 5th, and then March 19th, Katrina is going to be coming in. So this is, Jacob has been, the kickoff to kind of marketing month. So that's what we'll be focusing on. All right. Next week.
Excuse me, ma'am, like on March 19th, when she's coming, so will all of us will be marked for it? Or it just, sorry, I can't hear you.
Sorry, can you ask your question again?
Like on March 19 when she's coming for the storytelling, so will all of us will be marked for it, or it's just like a normal class?
Sivansh, you put me in a very difficult situation.
No, because on 20th March I have my competitive exam, so I'll be in Mumbai at that time.
Okay.
So if I'll be able to do it, I'll attend it. But
I can't give you an answer there. I can't give you an answer, so take that as the answer.
okay.
All right.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks for asking, though. All right, everyone. I will see you next week. Thank you, Jacob. Appreciated it.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you for the extension.
You're welcome, Vibe. Get it done.